Roxanne, you don't have to put on the red light. We were just joined by Roxanna Flores, head of people formerly of The Messenger, and she was such a great guest. We talked a little bit about a Sting interlude, courageous leadership, and what it's like to build a culture from the ground up. Roxanna has so much to share. She's such an amazing person, an incredible career in media. I cannot wait for you to hear the details of her story and hear this episode. Can't wait. Welcome to another episode of Higher Learning. I am your host, Rashid. Today, we have a very special guest, someone I'm very excited to talk to. Today, I'm joined by Roxanna Flores, Global Chief Human Resources Officer, Team Builder, Culture Curator, most recently led people at The Messenger, and we're going to talk all about that right now. But Roxanna, how you doing?
I'm well. I'm excited to be here, Oz.
And I'd love to see you. Ever since I've met you, your energy is infectious. You are totally, you mentioned it earlier, a New York girl. And so I just love everything you bring to the table. I'm so excited to dive into this. Let's start here. You went to go lead people at the company, The Messenger. I'm
Yeah.
interested, what drew you to that vision? What was exciting about that?
Yeah. So look, I had generally speaking been at very large multimedia, multinational global organizations. And this was an opportunity to build something new, right? To get in at the beginning and sort of build HR the way I thought it should be, create the culture that I thought, could be possible. And the Messenger's mission really spoke to me. It was at a time where no one assumes good intent. The purpose of the Messenger was to be a news outlet that sort of told the story without a slant and gave, just what, when, where, how, and why kind of information in a way that was digestible to people. And again, not one way or the other, not left or right, just news for the sake of information. And that, as somebody who's interested in news and information and listens to 5 podcasts a day to get my vision, or like, where do I land on this topic, that spoke to me. So that's why I took a dive.
Yeah, and I love that. I mean, I think if I look at, listen, I'm not bringing up any new topic here, but when you look at media, media is a for-profit business. And when you're a for-profit business that is going to inform what you lead with, right? If it bleeds, it leads. It's going to lean in on, I want people who are my audience to keep coming back. And so I got to keep feeding them the red meat or otherwise that they like to eat, right? And it can be a little bit sensationalistic at times. And that's just how things have evolved over the last 30, 40 years of broadcast news and media altogether. And so I think it's a very humble and exciting opportunity to look at things from an unbiased perspective. And who knows, maybe with artificial intelligence and all the new technology out there, we can now find a way to get an unbiased perspective that is just straight news, like you mentioned. But it's something that I think is a really, really good mission, and I think it's something that's exciting to be a part of. And I have to imagine it helped attract all different types of talent to the organization. I think a lot of people wanted to be part of something like that. Am I right?
Yeah, yes, definitely. It was a lot of people feel the same way, right? We just want information. We want to assume good intent. Our journalists were some of the best in the business, and really wanted to be a part of this refreshing new product. So yeah, it was great.
All right, so now we've got it, but just like with the news, we've got to give the actual news as it is. And so when we first started talking, you were leading people at the Messenger, but then since we last talked, there have been some changes in the organization, and not all of them great. So I want to hear about what's gone on, what's happened, and then I want to talk about the role of a people leader in communicating tough news, like we're about to get into right now. Go ahead.
Yeah, so since we last spoke, the Messenger ceased operations. January 31st was the last day that, you know, like many startups, there's a chance that they won't make it. We did not make it. It was swift and abrupt and probably left something to be desired for the employee population. But the Messenger is no more.
Wow. I'm interested because I'm well embedded in startup culture. And to your point, it can be very touch or go. Like I'm reading Elon Musk's bio with Isaacson. And I got to be honest, I don't know that I fully remembered how close SpaceX and Tesla were to bankruptcy and what things had to happen in successive order for that not to be the case and for it to be now what it isn't the biggest market cap for Tesla. SpaceX is obviously doing really, really well in terms of privatizing space travel. But things were very touch and go there. And there are many stories like that. So I'm just interested. Obviously, everybody comes in, you buy into a vision. It doesn't always work out. Sometimes the intentions are good, but that's startup world. That's how it works. But when you do have this bad news, I'm interested. What do you think are the best practices? What's the best way to share information where people have a job one day and then they don't the next? And how do you share something that's so tough and that can be so sensitive?
Yeah, look, I believe in courageous leadership. I think that, the seat, whatever the seat is in a leadership capacity, comes with great responsibility. And I do think you have to give face to things even when they are difficult. So I think, had I been able to do things differently, it would have been a face-to-face call with people, quick, to say, this has happened. I think we probably could have done a better job at communicating along the way. But as I shared in one of our previous conversations, I think my role is an internal consultant. My job is to give you data, to give you information, to give you best practices, and to tell you, sort of what I think should be done based on the population that we're leading. And then ultimately, it is your decision whether you take that advice or whether you run with however you are wired to run. So that is not how it happened. Employees got an email in the morning saying that, unfortunately, it's a lovely message, but it was an email. And things, as you know, really go quickly after that, right? So you shut down systems, you shut down access, the site was put down immediately. So there was a lot of things that I think we could have circumvented or given people access to, or kind of just a little more leeway, but it didn't happen that way. And media covers media like no one else. So the New York Times they leaked it. They leaked that it was happening. And so, of course, journalists saw it before, our CEO was able to get in front of it.
Population of the people that are being let go are some of the people with the deftest writing hands and who have some of the deepest connections in the space. And so,
That's right.
if good or bad, however it goes down, it's going to be out there. That's going to be that information. And listen, like, I'm going to take this from a perspective of I'm a founder myself. You come up against impossible situations. Your intent, if you're good at what you're doing, is always very strong, and then it just doesn't always end up working out. At the same time, I am a deep believer in that your character is best tested when things are down, the chips are down. And if anything, when those tough situations happen, my mindset is this: I have an opportunity right now. The guy I tell myself I am in the mirror in the morning, the guy I think I am when I go to bed at night, and I think I want to do the right thing by people and take care of my employees and take care of my customers, whatever it may be. I have an opportunity right now to show that I am that person in the hardest of circumstances, and I almost run to it. Now, listen, I don't know all the circumstances. I don't even know how I would handle the situation myself, but that is usually my mantra on these types of things. And I want to be the one, as the founder, leading out in front and telling my HR team, my operations team, be the one telling them this is what we have to do because this is who we are, this is who I am, and this is the right way to do it, even if it's tough, even if we have to face the music. So I know these circumstances and situations differ from place to place. I'm sure there's legalities, I'm sure there's board considerations, there's a bunch of things that are out there. But man, it's tough. It's tough. It's tough. And you see so much of it in terms of, I guess everybody can look back and play the Monday morning quarterback and say, well, I would have done this differently. I would have done this differently. I would have done this differently. It's not an easy situation, but also I think that sometimes, the people who are, if you're good enough to be able to want to build up the company and take it to a certain point, then you got to be able to face the music when it's the toughest too, right?
Yeah, listen, hindsight is perfect. And to your point about the startup mentality, right? I mean, there were a lot of things going on behind the scenes. And I think in this culture, it's not over till it's over, right? And, we had a close call before, we were able to rally around it, we were able to get more funding, and we had a deal that was very close to completion, literally working through the night before, that fell through at 7 a.m. And then at that point, you have a responsibility, right? You have to decide, if I don't have enough money to pay my people for another month or, run our operations or whatever it is, you have to make a call. And it's a tough call, but it's one that's necessary. And I think that's why this was so sudden and so abrupt.
Yeah, and listen, I'm gonna have a little empathy here too, because whenever you have those moments where it's touch or go and you win, right? Or like you're somebody that gets off on the deal or the investment, like that upside, that feeling you have is really high when it works out. And sometimes when you get enough of that, and it goes the other way, yeah, it's just as dramatically bad the other way, and you don't always know how to handle it, and that high can be the lowest low. And now is the moment you've got to make the hardest, most clear-minded decisions you can. I can imagine that's super tough, and I imagine that's not an easy circumstance as well. So trying to give some empathy and devil's advocate on the other side of it,
Yeah.
It's not an easy situation, right?
No, it definitely isn't an easy situation at all. And this is, especially when you're a seasoned executive, you've never lost before, and then all of a sudden crash. Like, I don't know that you know how to do that. And so, again, there are certain things that we could have handled differently. Hindsight's perfect. But yeah.
It is what it is. Well, I appreciate you being so candid and sharing with us. I know our listeners, they read about these things in the New York Times, in media, but to get to hear it kind of firsthand and kind of some of the best practices, I think that's really good stuff. So I really appreciate you sharing. I want to take it in a little bit of a different direction. We're going to come back to
Yeah.
the messenger because I want to know about what it's like to build a culture. But I want to start here because you've had a incredible career in media. You worked for some of the biggest multimedia brands in the world. You worked at Televisa Univision. You worked at Fortune. You worked at Meredith. These are some of the who's who of the media space. So I'm interested. How did you get into media in the first place? Because your career is built off of HR, but also in this industry almost exclusively. So how did you get into media and what do you love about it? What's unique about talent in the media industry altogether?
Yeah, it's really an interesting story. So I was a journalism major studying at Fordham at Lincoln Center, the Lincoln Center campus in the 90s. The Daily News was preparing, it's actually historical, there's books written about it, they were preparing to lock out NMDU, which was their truck driver union, for whatever that was happening at the time they felt was wrong. At the time, unions were really very strong. And so they were concerned with sympathy strikes. And so there was a 2-day assignment. I saw an ad in the Daily News, and there was a 2-day assignment for translators. And I'm Hispanic, I'm fluent. And I don't know, like 20, I'm young. And I'm a journalism major, and there's an ad in the Daily News, and this is it. This is a sign from above. I'm going in. So I go in and I am paired with a recruiter. So Tribune Company, who owned the Daily News at the time, flew in all of their recruiters from around the country. Oz, I'd never seen anything like it. Like, I'm just a girl from Brooklyn. Like, I had none of this experience, right? And there are lines and lines of people wrapped around the New York, the news building on 42nd in the city between 2nd and 3rd. And I mean, of every imaginable country. And so there are 90 of us, and all we're doing is translating for the recruiter. And, plate makers are plate makers. It doesn't matter if you speak Spanish or Mandarin or whatever. And so I am there in this room with 90 other speakers, temps, and I'm like, what is this thing? There was so much energy around it. And it was personnel at the time. And so our 2-day assignment is over. I became very friendly with the recruiter who I stood with for 2 days. And she said, hey, there's opportunity here. And I think we want a handful of people to stay. Would you be interested in staying? And I think it was like, I could do like night classes at Fordham at the time. And I was like, yes, I'm staying. And so again, I'm a journalist. This is what's going to happen, but I'm taking this slight detour in personnel. And so that 2-day assignment became a career. I was employed by the Daily News, which was owned by Tribune, worked through the strike, which was, if you're from Brooklyn and you've seen The Godfather and you're 20 years old and you are thinking, whatever this is very exciting. There's a lot of stuff happening. And I got the bug. And so I've stayed in media largely because I'm a journalist at heart. I love news and information. And I'm a plug and play. So I've been recruited for every organization. I stayed with Tribune for a really long time. And then when Rupert Murdoch bought the Wall Street Journal, they needed somebody with labor relations experience. In television, everybody is covered. And I stepped into that role. And then I followed my CHRO and president to Time Inc. Through the merger, divestiture, Meredith, I was meant to be there for a few months. And they offered me a job. And then Univision called. And then, so it's just been a series of, just calls.
Happy accidents initially, but then leading to this like illustrious career in such a dynamic industry. So listen, I know I have friends across all, human capital, people operations across many different industries. What's unique about media? Like, obviously there's the on-air personality, there's the journalism aspect of it. I'm sure the corporate back end is pretty similar in some ways, but what's unique about the talent aspect of that that face of the business. How's that different? How's that
Yeah.
unique?
I think no, I am a business person that specializes in HR. That's what I am. So I get to know my business. I like to see what's happening, how it works. No 2 days are the same. If you are me, whether I'm working at a chocolate factory or in media, I am digesting and learning and taking it in. And I want to be able to run into you in the hallway and talk to you about the latest news story with some level of enough to be dangerous, right? And so there's an energy, there's hard parts to it too. It's a business that's constantly having to evolve and survive, right? Mergers, acquisitions, divestitures, things are different. The people you meet are incredibly smart. There's just an energy to it. Look, the highs are highs and the lows are lows. But it's given me so much opportunity because to create new businesses, to transform. Before, when I look back at my career, even though transform is like the buzzword, we've been transforming since the beginning of time, right? Newspapers with digital, TV with cable, right? And just how do we continue to be relevant? And so I think that's what I love. And I'm sure it's in other businesses as well. I have just been recruited in. I call myself a plug and play in media because no matter what the platform is, I probably understand it enough, um, to just hit the ground running. And so yeah, I guess that's the answer.
I love that. I'm going to ask a very big question, and you may or may not have an answer for it. I mean, we work with a lot of media companies, and there's definitely, it's different now than it was 10 years ago. Let's just put it that way, right? The way that media companies make money, the way that what their profitability lines are, what they have to do, how they have to innovate, it's changing and it's continuing to evolve. Do you have any type of vision on where you think this is going, where you see it based on spending so long in this industry?
Look, I think the strong will survive. It's evolution, right? When I look back, again, I mentioned briefly when HBO was born, we thought TV would be gone. Some networks fell off and some networks remain. I think what's going to people, at least in my lifetime, for my generation, we still appreciate news and information, and we go to certain places for that, whatever it is that you like. So I think it will exist. I think the way people are consuming it is different, and I think we have to be prepared. Some of the greatest companies have failed because they rested on their laurels and they thought, we are X, we don't have to do anything, and they are no more, right? I speak very sadly about Time Inc., which was the brands, the richness, the smarts in that group of people. When we joined, it was because they had fallen behind in a digital age, and unfortunately we couldn't make it so, right? We couldn't bring them into the place that they needed to be. And so board responsibility, we sold to Meredith, and Meredith sold to Dotdash. And I think that that's what's going to keep happening. And there's a pruning process, but I think however you get your news, we have to figure it out and we have to serve it to you.
I love that. Now, I got to say, I look at the idea of an unbiased news perspective that the messenger was espousing, and we're in an election year in 2024, and oh God,
Oh
the
God.
timing is tough. The timing is tough. We need it more than ever right now. We're going to need it more than ever. We've got AI, we've got all these different things that are going on right now that are just going to make it harder and harder to get one source of truth. I'm interested. You were employee number 27 there. Okay. The big part of the vision had to be that you got to create a culture from the ground up. Now, I got to imagine part of that is, you have to be tied to the founder and what the founder sees the vision. But I'm sure there's some autonomy there too around, especially how you go about implementing these values and integrating into the organization. So, walk us through that. What's it like when you're like, an organization that has funding that's going to be growing and that you get to be the person that kind of has your thumbprints all over building its kind of initial cultural foundation? What's that like? And was that really attractive to you as part of why you went there?
It was incredibly exciting to have a blank slate and to, kind of run with it. I mean, look, the first thing I did, and I didn't know I had it in me, frankly, was staffing, right? When I joined, it was like, I don't know, early February, late January, and I was employee 27, and my remit was 250 journalists to launch by May 15th, right? I am not a recruiter. Sure, I'm a generalist, but I am not a recruiter, right? The tools, and I committed to it, and I didn't know I could do it. And so I did it. I don't know how really, but I do. I think I had the benefit of knowing enough to be dangerous, as I say. I hired a diversity recruiter because I thought that that was important. I've done a really good job at staying in touch with my community everywhere that I've worked. So I plucked a few people who plucked a few people, and LinkedIn was a great source, and journalism jobs, knowing all of the things that I know because I've been here this long, we made it. So yay, we got to where we needed to be. Then, I think that for me, again, it's giving face, it's knowing everybody, it's talking to everybody. No matter how large my organization have been, I always try to know people. I think when they know you and they figure out your style, they trust you. My job is to see the train coming before it crashes into the station, right? And the only way to really do that is through connection. And when you only have 300 people, it's easy to know those people. So, for me, it was just making sure people had what they needed, understood what we were doing, was available for any questions that we had. Broadly speaking, what I think works in terms of building culture is, clear values and purpose, everybody understanding and speaking the same language, right? Whether or not that happens, transparent communication, giving face, giving updates. This newer generation really wants to understand why. Like, what is our motivation? Why are we doing this? Why are we not doing this? And then, investing in their development and well-being. Sadly, we weren't around long enough as a product for me to implement a lot of the things that I, had in mind and, was sort of prepping for. But I think that's the answer. I think that's what usually works.
Okay, Rox, I'm going to ask you this. Again, this is a curveball. I'm going to throw it off the top of my head. So now you are the founder. You're creating your own company. You are deciding what are the values that are important to you that you want your organization to personify. What are some of the values that come to mind when I ask you personally, the organization that you build, what would it have?
I think courage through the tough times. I think purpose, clarity of purpose, why we're doing what we're doing. So many people are doing things. Why do we matter? And helping everybody understand their piece in it, right? We're a cog in a wheel, but generally speaking, people don't understand more than what they do, right? And so I think it's important for them to know, especially in such a small growing environment, how they fit in. And I think for me, diversity, equity, and inclusion are important. I want the right person in the role, but I think that it brings such richness of thought, of ideas, of ways to work that can really be beneficial. So I think that's it.
All right. Who knows what the next steps are for you? But maybe if it is your own company, we just got you started on getting the values ready. I love this.
Thank you, Oz. I owe it to you.
Here we go. We're founding companies here on the Old Higher Learning podcast. All right. New York Cares and Cradles to Crayons are two organizations and philanthropies that you're heavily involved in. I'm interested. Tell us more about them and how you got involved with these charities.
Yeah. Look, I've always been very I have an interesting family. I have 6 adopted brothers and sisters. In our communities, it's not uncommon, to do this, right? To take people in, so I have known from a very young age what people lack, like the needs of the community. And so New York Cares was the first one that I got involved with, mostly because I wanted something that I didn't have to commit to, but that I could pop in and sign up and do. New York Cares has this wonderful dashboard that if you're free on a Tuesday and you're looking for something to do, you log on to their site, and there's hundreds of projects throughout, New York, whether it's painting or cleaning a school or reading to children, feeding senior citizens, whatever it may be. So the flexibility of that organization is amazing. Like, anybody that wants to volunteer has no excuse with New York Cares. So I've been involved with them for many, many, many years. Cradles to Crayons is relatively new. Again, having grown up, my parents were foster parents, knowing the need of children. We talk about hunger. We talk about, homelessness, but we don't talk about the children that can't get to school because they don't have anything to wear. And I'm not talking about, Nikes. I'm talking about having pants and a top and, a coat. We don't talk about that. So there are not a lot of organizations that focus on this need. And I got introduced to Cradles to Crayons while I was at Univision through a former CEO who I remain in touch with. And it just spoke to me. I'm like, it's true. No one talks about these things. And, why didn't Timmy come to school? Well, Timmy couldn't because he doesn't have clean clothes or a coat. And I think it's an important mission. So got involved early on. And yeah, and it's a great thing. The pandemic also helped us figure out a way to make it national. So now we do a sort of a mailing direct program where you can volunteer, sign up. It tells you, this child needs, 2 tops, 2 jeans. We mail you the mailing slip. You put gently used clothes of your own children if you have them, or you go out and you purchase and you mail it in, and we make sure that it's delivered to that family. So yeah, it's a really wonderful cause. And I love kids.
I can see that. I can feel that. I can hear it in your voice with the passion you speak with. We'll put the information about those charities in the show liner notes, so people, if they want to reach out and contribute, they can. That's so amazing. I want to ask, how do you build a culture of giving for your organization? Because I see more and more how important this is, especially with Gen Z and millennials, in terms of wanting to give back, wanting to stand for something bigger than themselves, wanting to be involved of a company that is giving back to its community. But it's not always, not every company does it and does it very well. So how do you create a culture of giving so that employees feel that they're part of that bigger purpose and that they can contribute to some of these great causes?
Yeah, look, I think it's really knowing your audience, right? I mean, again, having worked with multi-generation, like where you have 5 generations working, right? And to your point, some people are into it, some people are not into it. It's really starting to get the pulse of what people are interested in doing and small ways of doing it, right? You can organize a volunteer day. You can, bring people into the organization and sort of do a team building activity that way. I think it has to be top of mind. I think the mistake that we make especially in larger organizations, and not just large, is we react. And I think to really create a culture of giving, it has to be, I say, like, how you have your apps and every once in a while you have to update that app because there's a product improvement. I think it needs to be part of your everyday. It needs to be organic. It needs to be constant, and people need to know about it, or even come to you and say, hey, I'm part of this organization and I'd like to do this, and figuring out a way for even small parts of your population to be able to do it. But it has to be something that is every day, and it's not just something happened and let me react, because I think employees don't feel as great about that as a consistency in in you being the kind of company that really touches your community in some way.
Fantastic, actionable advice. I really love that. It's awesome stuff. We are a hiring podcast, and so we got to pay the bills. So we got to make sure we talk about hiring. Let's start here. You've obviously hired thousands of people throughout your career, including 300 journalists in a 2 or 3 month timeline, as you recently mentioned. Do you have a core hiring philosophy for the type of people that you want to bring onto your team?
I think by the time you are with me, I know that you are capable, right? You don't get to me if you don't have the core competencies of the role. I think and I always say this, I would take a person with common sense and the ability to learn over the most decorated Ivy League person any day of the week, because I think, to work with people, you have to be adaptable. And so for me, it's really that. It's just knowing that I'm hiring for you for this, and you can do this. But who are you? What do how do you sort of work with others? And how do are you interested in learning and growing? And do you have common sense? Because common sense is not overrated.
It's quite important. In fact, I notice it most when we hire somebody or work with somebody that doesn't have it. Then it's like, oh man, I really should have checked in on that common sense. So, very key factor. If I ask you to think about a memorable interview, either you were interviewing or maybe you were interviewing somebody else, is there any that come to mind?
Yes. So I told you I fell into HR, and my parent company, Tribune, I grew up there. I was there for 14 years. And so when I went to interview for the Wall Street Journal, and I, had gone through all the people before the CHRO, who I adore and really, I think, made me, in terms of the business, who I am. He's on the 6th floor, which is the executive floor, right? So everyone's there. Rupert's across the way, and it's, you expect it's silent. It's a very intelligent and decorated organization. And as I am walking into the room, who became my boss starts belting out Roxanne, the police, just singing.
You don't gotta put on the red light?
Yes.
Wow.
It doesn't get more memorable than that. It totally shocked me, but it completely put me at ease. I'm like, this guy's crazy, and I like it. It was all of the sort of anxiety that I had as somebody who had never really interviewed for a job before, coming into this, old and established organization, and just hearing it just disarmed me and made me laugh. And the rest is history. I worked for him for like 10 years at different companies. So doesn't get more memorable.
Many people do not know this, but Sting is actually an avid listener of the Higher Learning podcast, and so he is going to be thrilled to hear his song.
Is that true?
Oh yeah, 100% true. Please don't check the facts on that at all.
I have another Sting story.
Okay, I want to hear a Sting story. Let's go. This is a Sting podcast now. Go ahead.
So one of my friends is an event planner for, super high-end events. And when she has clients that are, very well known, she hires her friends because we won't leak to the press. So she did Robert Downey Jr.'s wedding, and Sting was one of the guests at Robert Downey Jr.'s wedding, and I worked that wedding. And I'm standing we had a way where you had to enter, and you couldn't come through these double doors for whatever reason. So I'm standing there manning the double doors, telling everyone to go a different way. And Sting and Trudy Tyler come. And I just opened the doors. My friend Sophia is looking at me like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm not.
You don't need to ID Sting. Sting doesn't get ID'd, okay? He walks in wherever he wants to go. That's amazing.
I fell down on the job. I let him go in the wrong way. Anyway, since we were talking about Sting.
I love it. I'm so here for it. Now I got the song playing in my head. I'm not going to be able to get it out. All right, let's take this back to the hiring. Questions.
Yes,
Do you have a favorite question you love to ask in interviews?
I have two questions that I like. One is, what makes you break up with a friend? Which is just, I think it talks about what's really keenly important to you. And generally speaking, we are not different people, if we're bringing our whole selves to work. And then I make people imagine that they're the chosen candidate and that they get the role, and that whatever, 60, 90 days, they regret their decision. I want to know why. And everyone is like, oh, I would never. I'm a team player and I make things work. And I'm like, no, this has already happened. So tell me what would make you regret your decision. And I do that more to make sure that we can be what they need us to be. Because if they say something that I know my culture is not, then this is probably not the best place for them. So those are my two.
I love that. Those are really good questions. All right, I got to ask you. What would be a reason you break up with a friend?
Dishonesty. I'm incredibly loyal, and dishonesty. Yeah.
I like that. How would I answer that question? The real answer is probably some combination of growing apart, kids, family, things like that. But if there was a seminal moment of like, you know what, me and this person can't be friends anymore, misalignment of core values, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, it's very hard for me if I don't respect the character of somebody, right? And it's hard for me to hide it. It's hard for me to have conversations with them, go to lunch with them, and do that. Now, I can have tons of acquaintances where we're completely misaligned on everything. I'm okay with that. I can be civil. I can have a great lunch. But if you're going to be a real friend, if you're going to be somebody that is in the foxhole with me, well, I got to know we're fighting the same battles. I got to know we're fighting the same wars. I know you're looking out for me as much as I'm looking out for you and your family, and you're looking out for my family. And so for my core friends, that's a really, really important thing. And listen, there's very few things that I think are very core values, but honesty and integrity is up there, right? Care and concern about things that don't just impact you is, I think, a really important quality to have in somebody. Do you have empathy and understanding, even if it doesn't hurt me and it hurts somebody else, like why that's important? These are the type of things that if you want to be in my close inner group of circle of friends that you have to have. And then I think, the best of friends are the ones that I share values with, but also share experiences with, right? We can identify about work, right? We can identify about raising kids. We can identify together around our favorite sports teams. And those are the things that really bring those connections together. But the ones that I've seen that have fallen off are the ones where it just becomes very clear that what you care about, what's important to you, are no way tied to what I care about, what's important to me. And over time, that's just going to lead to, a growing apart.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. And I usually tell you why we're breaking up, even if we're friends, because I don't want you to wonder.
You're a courageous leader. You stand up at the toughest time, and you step up. That doesn't surprise me at all. Well, I don't think we're gonna break up. I think we're already great friends, and it's just gonna keep getting
I
better from here.
agree.
So let me ask you: we all miss sometimes when it comes to making hires, right? Is there a theme that you can look back on some of your misses that you made that maybe you wish that you would have done X differently or asked this, or what's kind of the common mistake you may make when you miss on somebody that you hire?
Yeah, I think it's not really understanding, look, I think you need to be a culture add, not necessarily a culture fit, right? I feel like we need different things and different ideas to really I hire people different than me because at this point in my life, I know what I'm missing. So I hire those that, can help me flex the full muscle, right? I think the mistake that I made was not understanding what would lead them to succeed in the culture that I was in, right? And that's why that question has become so important to me. What makes you regret your decision to join here? And because I think beyond being great at your role, you could be a star at one organization and come in and completely fail at another. I've seen it. And it isn't you, it's what's around. Well, it is you, but you know what I mean? It's sort
It's
of where
fit.
we
It comes
are.
down to like it's not good or bad. It's like you
Right,
fit
right.
great in this environment, but then we put you in this environment and the fit wasn't the same and we don't get the
That's
same
right.
results or the same output and you're not happy. So
Right.
that's how that usually works, right? So I always try to like
Yes, yes.
not frame things in bad or good. It's more
Yeah.
just about what's important to you. It's just like that friendship thing we talked about. What's important to
Yeah.
you and does our company bring that to the table, right? And vice
Right,
versa,
right.
right?
Right.
Those are when you find those great fits.
Yeah. And I find that when there's a miss, it's that I didn't see it, or didn't ask the question. Now I'm very focused on asking those questions that'll help you be really happy, successful, happy employees are successful employees. And that's what we want. So those have been my misses.
What do you do for your companies to create kind of a positive candidate experience? Because one of the things I think that is really an underrated form of marketing, especially when you work for some of the biggest companies in the world like you have, is you're talking to thousands of people in a given month or two, right? They're having an experience with your company where they might, be somebody that recommends working to a friend there, or might want to work there in the future in a different capacity, or maybe even be a consumer of your products or services. And so that experience is really important. How do you create not just a positive experience, but one that's like a realistic job preview so people know what they're stepping into? Because the other side of it is that, as a company, when we miss on somebody, we're gonna be okay, right? Well, hopefully you eradicate it quick enough and you can figure it out and move on. But that infects an individual at a much more pronounced level, and so it's really incumbent upon companies to make sure that they're also conveying what your company is and what the person might be walking into, so they make a great decision. So, what do you do, if anything, there to try to create that kind of experience?
I respond. People don't respond. For better or for worse, people have figured out that no matter what, I'm going to respond. I respond to everyone. It's just a part of what I do. I think it's onboarding is so critical, and how I handle the entrance and the exit in the very same way. Incredibly high touch and incredible honesty. This is what you can expect from us, and this is what you can't expect from us. This is not who we are, right? I take every call, I answer every email, and I make sure that they understand, that they get their questions answered and that they understand what they're coming into. And as much as I know the answer as well, right?
Yeah, and listen, you and I are very alike in that. It's almost pathological with me. In fact, I probably get 25 to 30 LinkedIn sales messages a day where people are writing me. And maybe it'll take one or two times they'll reach out, but I always write no thank you. Very short,
Me
very sweet.
too.
No thank you, no thank you, no thank you, no thank you, no thank you. And I get a lot of really positive responses. I've only had a couple times. Oh man, I had this one guy recently. He wrote me. I add him on LinkedIn because I add everybody on LinkedIn. And he wrote me and I said no thank you for his services.
Yeah.
And then he had the audacity to write me and say, "Well, then why did you add me on LinkedIn?" And I go, "Oh, brother, you just stepped to the wrong bull right here. I love conflict. I come running for this stuff." So I let him know in no uncertain terms, Me adding you to my LinkedIn is not an open invitation for us to become best friends or for me to purchase your services. And then
Right.
he did
It
not.
was a professional courtesy because it is a professional site. I wouldn't add you on my Facebook or Instagram, but LinkedIn is a professional network.
Thank you. And I have a team, a swath of people who are selling our services, and I am respectful that it's a very hard job. And the best thing that you can do a lot of the times is make people, know I'm not interested and know right off the bat. But I'm pretty curt and
Same.
pretty familiar with it. Okay, so you and we got a lot of like. I like that. Let's take this in a little bit of a different direction. Have you thought about, you have to, what's going to happen next?
I haven't. No, the truth is I'm not looking for a job. I've never looked for a job. I have joined organizations because something that has happened in that connection makes my palm sweat and my heart go pitter patter. And I'm like, uh-oh, like, it makes me nervous how interested I am in what's happening. And so, it's so fresh for me. And I've never not worked. I've been working for 700 years. And so I want to
You look great for
well
700. I got to tell you.
preserved. I want to be thoughtful. I'm having conversations. I've been fortunate enough that they saw the news and they just completely like just reaching out. Let's talk. What do you want to do? When do you want to do it? That kind of thing. So I'm having a lot of lunches and breakfasts and coffees and chats and I really trust that opportunity that's going to make my palms sweat it's going to come,
Let me frame
and
it for you a little bit differently. How about this? Finish this sentence for me, okay? The next place I work at has to have what?
a leadership that truly, truly cares about their people.
How are you going to vet that in an interview?
I think I've learned so much. The questions to ask and the questions, that don't really matter. And I think research, really on meeting more than one person, understand like Glassdoor. There's so many different ways these days to get, information. Or you know what, or are really open to someone who's going to come in and really help them to connect to their people, right? We say this so people are our biggest asset, and we don't really pay attention to that. And so, I think these days there's just so much information that you can access to know who the CEO is, what his philosophy is, who his leadership team is, what people think about the organization as they leave. So I think it would be that, a ton of research.
I like that. Good answer. Anything I can do to help with that, you please let me know. I want to go back through one of your old LinkedIn's. I'm looking at one a few weeks ago you did. Don't
Uh-oh.
compare. I think this phrase is particularly impactful for emotional intelligence because it forces us to look inward. And emotionally intelligent people use a super simple two-word phrase, don't compare. Why did that stand out to you?
I usually when I post something on LinkedIn, it's born from something that's happening in my organization or something that a friend has talked to me about, or where I just really feel like something needs to be said about it. I think our culture has become voyeuristic, right? We think people have a better life. We were looking at whether it's Instagram or TikTok or, oh my God, look where they are and look what they, and we forget to live our own life. We're thinking, if I have this, I'll be happy. If I were there, I'd be happy. They have so much better, better life, a better career. And the reality is nobody should be posting their dirty laundry, right? So of course you don't really know what people are going through. And I think we lose our own life, right? Our people, our tribes, our family, and how we live. And I think we do ourselves a huge disservice. And yeah.
I love that. Jackie, was it David Ackert who said comparison is the thief of joy? I think it was a Roosevelt quote.
Oh yeah, it's so true. It
It's
really
so
is.
true. It's so true. It's a comparison is the thief of joy. If you're always looking at the person next to you and what are they doing, run your own race, right? Determine your own success. Totally agree. We're on the same page.
The only people you should compete, the only person you should compete with is yourself. Really, that's it.
Your yesterday, your version of yesterday, right? Who you were yesterday. That's why I'm comparing myself to. And you know what? I'm usually evolving day to day, so I'm usually pretty happy with that comparison most of the time. All right. Book that you've read that you're excited about or you want to share, or any type of content maybe it's a great TV show you saw or anything, any type of content that's really exciting to you right now you want to share.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a big book nerd. I think the book that I have lived my life by is a book called Never Eat Alone. It's by a man named Keith Ferrazzi, I believe is his last name. And it is basically about reciprocity, about if I can do something for you today, and it's, I should want to do that for you, not because you're going to do something for me or because you're going to owe me one, but just because we're sharing this life and this path together, and we should do it. And it's a miss not to. Why? Because, it's in it now is the perfect example for me that this way to live is great, because I always respond. I always take a call. I'll always make an introduction if I can. And today, where I'm finding myself trying to figure out what to do next, I've had so many of those people reach out to me and say, what can I do for you? And I think if we all, just stop competing with each other, but genuinely try to help each other, I think we could all, be further along. So that book is great. And I think he has an updated edition now.
Along that vein, I got a book I'm going to recommend for you. You got a little bit of time right now, so I want you to check this one out and tell me what you
Yeah.
think. I just recently read it. It was given to somebody who's a confidant of mine who knew I would like it. It's called How to Know a Person by David Brooks. You should read that. It's a lot about the emotional intelligence of empathy and reciprocity and giving back and what that brings to you. I think you're really going to like that. Check
I'm
that
going to
out.
pick it up.
Okay.
Thank
Love
you.
it. All right. Last question.
Okay.
If we had to offer one bit of career advice to 700 years ago, Roxana, when she first started her career, right, that you didn't know then, but that you know now, what advice would that be?
Take the chance. Always take the chance. Follow your instinct. It has not failed me yet. And even in this situation where I am today, I'm super grateful for the opportunity that I had to do this, to reconnect, to meet incredible people. And I just think it's made me richer. I'd say take the chance.
I love that. So, Rox, I'm going to be visiting our Midtown Manhattan office in the next, 6 weeks or so. Where are we going to eat? Where are we going to grab a drink? You got a recommendation?
Oh my God, you let me know when you're coming and I will be your tour guide. I'm a foodie. I will take you someplace.
I take that very seriously because I'm a foodie
Me
myself.
too.
So I need somebody that's going to take us for a good bite. I'm really going to count on you for that, okay?
I'm the one. Tell me where you're going to be and I'll find that spot.
All right, I'm right across from Bryant Park, so I shouldn't be too far from you.
Oh,
I'm really looking
perfect.
forward to it.
Okay, great.
All right, cool.
Cool.
Rox, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. I hope you have a great one. I know you're gonna do great things as you go forward. I know it's been probably a little bit of a tumultuous couple months, but you are a courageous leader, and I know you're gonna land on your feet and things are gonna be great. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun.
All right, talk to you later.
Bye.